That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that biggin.
Welcome into another episode of the BAM Pod with Big Ed as your host here, and the guest we have on tonight is a real pleasure for me. It's somebody that I've met a few times and have really had some great conversations with, and everybody out there pretty much knows him, and that's Mr. Shaw Grigsby. Shaw comes in with a heck of a resume under his belt. You know, he's been to the Classic over 16 times. He's been 64 top 10s. He's had over 100 top 20s. He's one of the most liked, most energetic, most, just one of those guys that you're just gravitated to when you get out there and start listening to him talk and you start watching him fish, because he is definitely got the energy, and this is a really good show. We had a lot of fun doing it. So sit back, tune in, hope you enjoy this one, and we'll get her started. Let's go. All right, everybody. Well, welcome into the BAM Pod. This is Big Ed, your host, and on the line tonight, I went out and one of the gentlemen that I have met a few times now, and I met him in Florida this year at the ICAST show. He said he'd come on the show, and he is a man of his word, and we are here. We're talking with a definite living legend of this sport in Mr. Shaw Grigsby. Shaw, welcome into the show, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Enjoying being here.
I was talking to him just earlier, and I said, it's hard to look at everything that this guy's done in his sport. I mean, between the TV shows and the different circuits he fishes, he just everything. You start to look it up, and it's like, oh, the Bassmaster circuit, oh, the MLF circuit, oh, the TV shows. He's done just so much in this sport. He's probably got more knowledge than I'll ever acquire, for darn sure. And, if you guys are kicking back and you're getting ready to listen to this, strap on in, because I guarantee you we got some stuff we're going to talk about. And I talk about a bunch of different things. So we'll get into his favorite food and all kinds of stuff. So Shaw, you just came off a tournament, and we were talking a little bit about that earlier. And it's that time of year where it's summer, it's coming off. You're up in Detroit. What was the water way up there?
It was Lake St. Clair, and you could actually fish some of Erie and go all the way to the mouth of Huron. So it was a pretty good amount of water, but mainly it was Lake St. Clair. Now,
you said you were doing well in the first part, and it's for day one, 21st, day two, not 21st anymore. And it's one of those things, that's it. That's
a real kind way of saying it. Not 21st anymore.
It's that time of year. It's that summer going into fall transition. Tell us a little bit about what you see, in these water, and especially if that's such a northern lake. You're up there, and it's going to get affected a little bit more by this. What are the transitions right now that you're really seeing on these waterways that guys should be looking for as they're out there?
Yeah, up north like that, they really do start to group up, and so where they'll be a little bit more scattered. They spawn, and then they're a little bit more scattered during the summer, and then when you get to that fall, they gang up in these great schools, and you can just really have fun catching them. So when you find them, there's usually lots. Now, when we were there, it was at that transition time, and so they were scattered a little bit more, but we would go along. I was throwing a crankbait, Strike King 5XD, and cranking the grass mounds and the just scattered grass and stuff. And like I said, I did really well day one. First two periods I caught them, and then I just couldn't put it together for the next day. I did the same thing at Champlain. I was like in 14th after day one, and dropped on the second day. So it's just these guys are amazing. I mean, oh my goodness, Jacob Wheeler and the guys are there's just this whole crowd of these young anglers that are so good. and it really is fun to watch it. I mean, and just and to be around these guys and see how incredible they truly are at finding and catching fish. It's insane. So yeah, and I'm just getting old, so but it's still fun as heck, man. I love every minute of it.
It's so funny because I talk I hate to say you're old because it means that I'm old. So, but what it was, but I've been watching your career for a long time. You're one of the guys who really got me into this sport. I enjoyed watching your shows. I enjoyed watching. And one of the things I always notice is that when there's, guys who are out there who have so much passion for this sport. I mean, I'm not going to say your age on the air or anything like that, but it's one of those things that it's like, when you catch a fish still that's a good fish, you go crazy. You're still like, oh my God, I did this. Look at this thing. I mean, how many, it's you just get to where you're excited because you're excited. You're watching it just going, oh my gosh, he's got a giant, and it's so contagious. One of the things that, is so interesting right now and the way that this sport is transitioning for me that I see is, like you just said, you got these young kids that are coming up and they know the electronics, they know the new ways to find fish. They know the ways to mark them. They know the way to set up. They know how to do all these different things. And in saying that, watching guys like yourself and Gary Klein and Rick Clunn and even Kevin Van Dam now, who's old too, I just gave you that one, but it's that thing. You look at it and you go, they didn't have the technology back then by any stretch of the imagination. I've watched shows where you guys are looking at the little flashers and, there's a school of fish here. I think, there's grass here, maybe. How has that really been the big game changer, or has that been the biggest game changer? Is the electronics, or is it just the skill level that you guys basically set and then brought along and these guys have just picked up and run with it?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but you got to understand when we started, people always ask me, you get a real job, and they always treated fishermen as, just a fun hobby and not necessarily a profession. And so, it goes to back then it was that way. Now you have junior angler clubs, you have high school clubs. I mean, I believe in Alabama, there's something like 600 or 800 different high school clubs. That's how big it's getting. So you have all these anglers fishing in their local clubs and in school competitions. Then they now get scholarships to go to college. So now you have college fishing, and they're in competition. And when you finally get to the level where you step out and fish, in the FLW circuit, which is now the Big Five, or you decide to go with bass, whichever way you decide to go. I mean, you're so seasoned, so they've had so much experience that heck, I probably didn't have that much experience after 3 or 4 years on the pro circuit, and so it's that, that they've had so much experience and they have so much knowledge. And then they have great equipment. The electronics are amazing, especially that forward-facing sonar. And I've got the active target, and it's just ridiculous to watch them eat your bait. I mean, it's a blast. And so, but it's a little bit of everything because they have a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge. Used to be you only had a few magazines that you could read things in. Now you have all the knowledge on YouTube instantaneously. You want to know, how to fish a drop shot, where, when, how, why, you got it. You can just look it up. And so there's just so many factors that play into this new, young anglers that are just, incredibly proficient. I mean, Michael Neal at the last tournament there at St. Clair set every record we had. And Jacob Wheeler had set them all prior to that, and you're like, this is just amazing that, that you can have records broken like that. I mean, where, the winning weight's way over 100 pounds in one day, and guys itching it. I think Michael Neal caught 100 pounds every single day he fished, over 100 pounds. Cool. And that's intense. I mean, that's just, you got to realize how many fish that is quality fish,
Yeah.
over 2 pounds, and just go, that's just a big wow, and same on the bass circuit. They're
Right.
just so good. They're just, it really is just a tribute to how this sport is growing and how it's grown. And I'm just, I'm just marveling at being a part of it and just going, wow, this is really fun. It's fun to watch and fun to see. We've always wanted that to grow and get bigger and turn it from just more of a pastime into, take our passion and be able to really make it a professional sport, and real proud to see it come along like that.
Well, that kind of leads me into a question I've been wanting to ask is, you came up in Bassmaster, pretty much everybody did. If you were going to be a professional angler, you were there. And now you have the MLF stuff coming out, the Bass Pro, all these different circuits that are up there, but these are the two big ones right now. What do you think this was the natural transition to the MLF from the Bassmaster? I know it's 5 fish versus catch everything you can, that's keeper, that sort of thing. I know the differences between them, but do you think that that's the natural transition, or do you think that there's another step to go? Do you think there's, where do you really see this sport going? And the other side of that, and this is a question I ask everybody that comes on the show when they're at the level you're at, is, when do you think this will be considered a professional sport? One that is battling an NFL or an MLB. When do you think that can happen, or do you think it can ever happen?
Absolutely, on the last question, and I'm going to say that very honestly, I think we've accomplished that, and that was really what Major League Fishing was all about. We started with this format of catching, every fish, so that you weren't, it'd be like, somebody shooting a 3-pointer, but you can only shoot 5 3-pointers in a game. If you hit more, they're only worth 1 pointer. They're not worth anything.
Right.
And that's what a 5-fish limit is. The only reason that we ever had a 5-fish limit is, originally it was like 15. Well, there was no limit. Then I think they went to 15, then 10, then 7, and then 5. And that was because you killed so many fish and you didn't want to kill a lot of fish. And so they went to a 5-fish limit. And so very honestly, with the progression of Major League, what that does is that conservation wise, you just catch them and release them immediately. So you're not doing anything to the fishery. You're not transporting fish from one place to the other. You're not, having them in your live wells and banging them around and whatever. You just catch them and release them. So that's really a cool deal. Mm-hmm. And you're getting credit for what you're doing rather than only getting 5. And if you get a big one, you've done really well. And if you don't get a big one, you're kind of back in the pack.
Right.
And so, it's, to me, it's amazing that progression has happened. And I felt that was going to happen. There was going to be another, generation from what we originally had. And that's happened. The other thing, the reason it was started was because we wanted to appeal to sports people, right, not fishermen. So, fishermen love fishing. They're gonna watch it. They're gonna be passionate. We still watch, 5-fish limit fishing all the time. There's a tournament going on right now on
right.
Lake Norman. I think there's another one on Havasu, and so on national levels, and we get to look those up and watch them, and get on the internet. It's really cool. But what we wanted was something that these millions and millions, not a few 100,000 that are fishermen, that we already had involved in it. We wanted to get a part of these millions of sports people that like to watch competitions.
Right.
And so that's what Major League Fishing did by, having a scoreboard where everybody knew what was going on. So you have score tracker and you knew what everybody's catching. So you can make adjustments like, oh my gosh, I really have to pick up the pace or I've got this down pat, I'm doing
right.
good. And you can make adjustments and things. But what it turns out for the viewer is it's more like a NASCAR race. This guy's ahead, and then, oh no, he catches one. Now he's ahead and he's behind. And it just creates this unbelievable tension, and it's just a really, really neat excitement that goes on with this the end of the whole tournament. So what's happened, and what I think a lot of people aren't aware of, is that our ratings are nuts. And when I say nuts, they have surpassed anything and everything done in the outdoor sports, genre, anything, everything. Right. And so, being number one rated and all that. And then a really cool deal was, obviously we're doing some things really, really right when you take over number one. They did a marketing study, and we're actually, if you ask people about professional fishing, what comes to mind, and the first thing comes to mind is MLF by about 12 points over our competition. So we've done that. And then to know that we even got a call from PGA Tour about some of the stuff we were doing. Wow. And I'm like, this is really, so I think what I'm trying to say here is that I think we've approached that, or we are there. We're in the not necessarily the infancy, but the infancy of it really being professional and seeing things that are happening within the MLF deal is just awesome. So, I'm probably a little too old to really enjoy some of the ramifications of what it's going to be, but I can tell you, these young guys, the future is amazing. I mean, just amazing. And it'll be fun to sit back with my grandkids and watch it and go, man, isn't that just neat to see? So, so I think really we're seeing the start of it right now.
That's such a great perspective that, I know that, I've heard Willie Mays talk about it. I've heard about, some of the other greats in different sports sit back and talk about it and look at it. And some have been bitter, some have been, happy. Some have been, it's like, look at where the sport's gone. Others have been, these guys don't play tough anymore. They don't do that sort of thing anymore. But almost everybody I've talked to that's been a, more of an older angler that's, come up and watched this sport grow in the way it is, almost every one of them to a T has said exactly that. It's like, it's really awesome to see where it's going and where it's been. And guys like yourself, you were the ones who paved the way for all this. You were the ones who, took the rocks out of the road and graded it and got it ready to go and started it. And I think it's awesome that our sport allows for guys like yourself to take some pride in the fact that you helped do that. You helped pave the way. You helped get it to where it's at. And I think that, unlike a lot of other sports, this one, our younger anglers have looked back and said, you know what, these guys did a lot to bring it here. And I haven't heard a lot of them talking, like they're just assuming they deserve it, even though that's kind of the culture we live in right now. I don't know if you've seen that a lot or not, but
I have. I've noticed that a lot of these younger anglers are really great people. Also, outside of the angling world, they're just good people, and that's good to see. I think we're turning it over to a good group and a group that'll cherish the sport. We got into it not for money and not for fame and not for glory or anything, because there really wasn't much of that there.
There wasn't any there.
We got in it because we loved it. I mean, that's it. It was passion. And I've always told people, I said, and my dad used to tell me this, growing up, he said, son, listen, I don't care what you do in life. He said, you can, go dig ditches, or you can go be a brain surgeon. I don't care, as long as you're happy doing it. As long as this is what you want to do, as long as you have a passion for it, he said, I'll support you. And he was reluctant at first with the fishing. He wanted me to be, businessman or do whatever. And he was reluctant, but he loved fishing. And I won the Red Man All-American back in 1984 and got a check for $100,000, and that's probably more money than he'd seen in his lifetime. You know,
Right.
he was working as a college professor. I think he was, you know, making maybe $30,000 a year, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, and it just wasn't a lot of money. So when I won that, he had this huge grin on his face, and he actually traveled with me for years on tour, and it was fun. So, you know, fishing is such an incredible sport. And that's why we got in it. It's just a passion for fishing, spending time, making memories, relaxation. I mean, there's just so many different avenues that you can enjoy fishing, and it's just an amazing sport.
Well, you know, and that's funny because I talk about that. I've talked about it today with some friends of mine. I said, you know, it's the reason I truly love this sport, and the way that bass fishing, or the way the outdoors in general is that, you know, it doesn't really matter who you are. If you're standing on the side of a bank and some guy walks up to you and he's, you know, just a gang member looking, you know, thug guy, and he steps up to you and says, "Hey man, how's the fishing going?" It's like, all of a sudden, doesn't matter who they are, what they are, we're talking fishing, and life is good, and all of us, there's a connection there. And it's something that really brings people together. The outdoors world brings people together. And I love that about what we do. You know, so that's, you know, just taking off of your point on that. And, you know, we talk about this, and because you and I talked about this when we were in Florida about the whole, you know, East Coast, West Coast thing. And I'd love to, I'm going to pose the question. I'm going to pose it in a harsh way here, but you guys never come back out to the West. You guys never come back over here. Are they just afraid to come out here? I mean, or is it just the fact that it's so financially burdensome that they can't do it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any, you know, afraid of coming out. I had heard rumor that we were going to go out there, meaning the Bass Pro Tour was going to go out there, you know, last year and then this year, and I haven't seen it on the schedule. I know in discussions that it has been on the discussion list of going out there. You know, it is a little bit of a financial burden, but I can tell you, every time Bass announced it, I loved it. Right. I mean, I was just like, oh yeah, we get to go out and experience that, and know that, I mean, those fisheries out there are just so cool and unique, and you know, from Clear Lake and the Delta that we fished, and then I fished a few other places, you know, whether I was filming or whatever, but they're just magnificent, and you're always excited. You're always exploring new stuff, and you always know any pitch you could catch your personal best, the biggest bass of your life, and so to me it was exciting. You know, and I drive out there. I pull some big long days to get to the border, and then a long day to get to the Delta or to Clear Lake, and you know. But when you get there, it was wonderful, and we always would back to backs, and so we talked about it on the Bass Pro Tour, and I hope it happens. You know, and I know the Big Five. You know, we have I guess we have. I'm trying to remember all of them. You got the Tackle Warehouse series.
Yeah. We still have
Pro series.
Yeah. We still have that out here. It doesn't draw as much as, you know, I think they're hoping it does. That's more of a California thing than anything else. And I think COVID had a lot to do with it, and still does have a lot to do with whether or not they travel this far and that sort of thing. I know that I just knew that you were a proponent of coming back out, so I thought it was a better question to ask you, because I've talked to a couple of the guys, James Watts and things like that, and they're just like, nope, no interest. I'm staying here. I don't want to go. I don't want to go out there. I don't want to get out there and, you know, drive all the way out there just to get my butt handed to me by Skeet Reese or, you know, Ish Monroe or, you know, Fred Romanes or one of these guys. You know, they're just like, nah, I'm not interested in it. I'll stay out here where I like it. So.
We have a process that we call Simple Price, Simple Process. And what that means is we take our lowest and best price and we post it on every single car. There's no back and forth. And by simple process, what that means is when you meet somebody, They can handle every aspect of what you do in your card transaction buying experience from beginning to end.
Isn't that amazing, the difference in thought process? And when I was growing up, my only thought was, man, I want to get in there and fish, and maybe, because we got paired together back in those days, and I always was going, man, I'd love to get paired with Rick Clunn or Gary Klein or any of those guys, and get to fish with them in the boat, and got really fortunate to do that. And did I care whether I got my butt kicked? No, I wanted to fish with these guys, and I want to learn from these guys. I learned more in one day with Rick Clunn on Lake Powell than I could have probably in a lifetime of fishing. I mean, that's how good he is.
Yeah.
And very willing to share and talk and run you through, and just so confident in what he was doing. And it was just an amazing experience. And the same thing when you fish with Gary, and those old time pros were amazing. And so when I got in the sport, I never worried about getting my butt kicked. I knew I was going to get my butt kicked, half the time, but I also knew at some point I was going to do some butt kicking myself, and I did, my last win on the Bass Tour was, I think, a long time ago, like 11 or something, 2011. But what was really cool is who was nipping at my heels the whole time, every single day, was Kevin, and Kevin was, that's when you got the literally the GOAT, greatest of all times, Kevin and Rick going back and forth, and you look at that, and he's on your tail. That was a great challenge, and I don't mind that, and so when you look at the mindset of other people on this nowadays, it's really amazing how they feel that they should, have an opportunity to win, or they should be, right there to win. And I'm like, I just love the opportunity to go fishing. I want to go fishing. And if I get my tail beat, I'm like, okay, I get it beat. And I learn a little bit, and I keep going, and I get a little better every time.
Yeah. And that's really why I like the Cup events. They're so interesting to me because they take, I don't want to put this in air quotes or anything, but the supposed greatest bass fisherman we have to offer, and and that's always debatable, but it takes this top tier guys, and it takes you to water that very few of you knew anything about or know anything about. You maybe heard, or maybe you fished on there on the side or whatever, but they put you on these little bitty bodies of water. They say, good luck. They give you very little runaround time, very little there's no practice. It's like, go out and do it. And you get to step up. And like you said, you get to show the skill that you've acquired over the years of how you do it. And it is amazing to see who steps up, who falls down, who has good days, who has bad days, because everybody does, and everybody will. I mean, I've watched that score tracker and just laughed and just been like, somebody standing down there just, okay, this guy's got 77 pounds and I still haven't caught a fish. There's an issue here, because that happens, and it's so interesting to see. And it makes, what I think it does too for a guy who's watching it, or, the local guy who's sitting on that water, and he's like, yeah, you know what? Gary Klein doesn't always catch the darn fish, It is cool to see. I think those Cup events are just amazing that way.
Yeah, they are, and that's the ultimate challenge, is to get put on a body of water, and all of you guys get on it at one time and try to figure it out.
Right.
And so, it initially, and I'll take a little credit here, that was one of my big inputs into the format for MLF, was the no practice, no nothing, go cold. And it hit a little resistance, but then they thought about it and they go, that's really a cool thing, to take the viewer in the boat while you're figuring it out. How do I figure this out? What do I got to do? What am I thinking to make changes and adjustments? And so that was really a neat deal, and it's proven to be a winner for definitely for the Cups. And people ask me about that on the tour. Said, now, do you know where you're going? I go, yeah, on the tour we do.
Right.
Bass Pro Tour, it's a regular tour. Your stops, you got 7 of them. You can't get any info. can't really get any help and stuff like that. So you just still have to do it on your own. But, you can research and where it is. Now, a cup, you got no clue. I mean, they tell you a city. You're going to be here in this city, and you may drive an hour to get to a body of water. You don't know. And so it's really fun. You may cross a state line. You may be in Mississippi and fish in Louisiana, and so there's no telling where you're going to be. And it's just really cool to look at a body of water, get a map and look at it and go, it's this time of year. I need to be doing this, and I got to try this, and go and just start going, and it's just a great challenge.
It's interesting you say that, because that's, I think that's such a difficult deal right there in the one statement you made. You've got to, okay, this is what should be happening this time of year. So you're going from, sometimes they're up in, New York, sometimes they're down south, sometimes they're Midwest, sometimes they're, whatever. How is it that you just, I mean, I know for you, it's more of you've been doing this so long that you know what should be going on. How do you tell the local guy, the average guy going out there? It's like, hey, I'm going to get up and go. I go out maybe once or twice a week and I fish. And how does this guy always know that hey, the rip bait should be going, or the crankbait should be going, or the jig should be going? Or how is it that you just get that kind of knowledge, or where would you get that kind of knowledge for the average guy out there looking to go fishing right now?
Yeah. It's kind of cool. And I don't think it's that that I've been fishing so long, but it's knowing that bass are bass. I used to worry like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do in New York? Am I going to go up to New York and what are bass going to be doing? What are they be holding on? And it turns out, there's a little bit of differences between the species. So if you have largemouth and smallmouth, there'll be a little bit of differences there in what they prefer, what cover they prefer, what kind of depths they prefer. But in spots a little bit different also. But overall, a largemouth is a largemouth, whether I go to California, I go to New York, or I'm in Florida, or anywhere in between, they're still the same. And so they still kind of react the same. And you basically use, your starting point is going to be kind of seasonality, meaning if it's in the springtime, they're going to be shallow, around the shallow, whether it's pre-spawn, just getting ready to come in, or they're spawning, they're on the flats, in the shallow pockets and on the bank. And then when they get finished spawning, they come back to kind of those pre-spawn spots and points. And then you have summertime, and it goes from spring to summer. And summer will be more of the little bit of deep water stuff, and you can still have shallow going on, which is really cool. Right. You can go back in creeks and stuff like that, and you can catch shallow fish, or movement of current that keeps temperature, level. Then you can still go shallow. And then the fall is kind of a neat deal because you got a lot of shad activity there, where the shad they migrate to the backs of pockets, and then the cold fronts hit them and kills them, and kills off so many. And what's really cool, those bass just gorge themselves on it. And then you got winter time where they're really hunkering down, and that's generally more of a deep thing. So when your seasonal kind of patterns, and then you just apply it to wherever you're at, it kind of makes it fun. You can still, I've been places where I feel like I'm in the donut hole, and everybody around you catches them, and you just can't figure it out. And then, most of the times I get out there and I can catch, quite a few, it seems, and it kind of shows this year on the Bass Pro Tour. I catch them pretty good day one, and then I either lose contact or something, and just don't hammer that day two away. But so that's kind of what it is. You show up, you kind of figure what the fish are. They going to be shallow, they're going to be deep, and then you just kind of look for places. They're ambush feeders. You look for places where they have cover, whether it's vegetation, vegetation points, or places that maybe have current flow or wind flow over them, where they can kind of sit there and ambush stuff. And so if you know your fish, then you can kind of look around and hunt around, and it's like putting pieces of the puzzle together, on your first day of practice. And I remember Gary telling me this. Now he told me this when I was a rookie year on the Bass Tour. I got paired with him, And I asked Gary, I said, listen, I'm going to fish a Lake Havasu for the Redman All-American. I had won it on Kissimmee the year before. And so in 85, I was going to fish the Redman All-American out there at Havasu. And never being out there, I was like, what do I do? And he says, man, what I do anywhere I go, doesn't matter. He says, I'll take a small area of the lake. I'll make it my lake. I'll go through it and I'll fish everything, from points to back of pockets, to creek channels, to whatever. You just take this and make this your area. And then where you catch a fish, you remember every place you had a bite and catch a fish, and you develop a pattern. And then you apply that to the rest of the lake so that you're not running all over the lake trying to find, trying to fish here, fish there, fish the north end, south end, west end. You just take one area, one creek, whatever, concentrate on it, figure them out, and then apply it to the rest of the lake. And I've used that my whole career, so that's kind of how we do it on the circuit.
Wow, that's impressive. That it's something that you learned so long ago and that it still applies today and works, fairly successful, at least for the first day, anyways.
I think a lot of that comes down to age too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not as, and I don't think you see anybody. You would arguably Rick Clunn was the greatest bass fisherman, in my era, and then of course Kevin came on and took it over, and now we have Wheeler that might take it over. As Wheeler's just amazing. So when you look at that, and you can see, Rick won when he's like 70 or 71,
right.
He still won a tournament. Most amazing thing ever. But when you see people, when they get in the 60s and 70s, it tends to not perform quite as well as you did when you're in your 40s. And what was really cool is I was sitting with Jordan Lee, won back-to-back classics. I'm in line with him when we were there in the BASS tournament, and I'm like, you do realize that you don't hit your peak until you get, close to 40, and he's like 20 something.
Right.
And I said, imagine that, to have won 2 Bassmaster Classics, and you're in your 20s, young 20s. I'm like, it's just so cool to see this. And so, but yeah, you do hit your peak in those 40s, and it really is strong in the 50s, and then it just kind of makes it a little bit tougher and tougher. And what the greatest thing about our sport, though, is to see that you can compete as a teenager. Gary Klein came out as a teenager. He never had another job. He fished, from the day 18 on, and he competed in tournaments before that, but he went professional. That was his profession. And yet you can win at 70. So there's no other sport that you can continue to do and excel, with any physical kind of sport like fishing. There's just nothing to compare with it. It's just, to me, it's just one of those fantastic things. You see guys that are professional football players, and when they retire, they go fishing. They become professional, they can be PBR guys, bull riders. We can have, motorcycle guys that are out there that race motocross and stuff, and they get done, they're going fishing. And so it's just such a great sport. I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. Do you think you mostly contribute that to just physical, or because of the, because I guess most people don't really think of bass fishing as this big physical sport. And I'm kind of one of those. I mean, there's most of the people on tour, there's a few on there, probably Jordan could, but it's like, hey guys, I need you to run 100-yard dash. Well, no, that's just, I'm not watching James. I don't have the time to watch James Watson or, one of the brothers there, run the freaking, Ish Monroe. It's like, you ain't getting that guy 100 yards unless there's something big out, some barbecue at the other end. These guys aren't going. But it is a very physical sport. It is one that if you're in condition, you can be on that water. And when you talk about a Rick Clunn has always been a guy who's very much in condition. Gary Klein, these guys are, Mike Iaconelli, Kevin Van Aert, these guys are stay in condition and they excel. Do you think that plays a large part in this, and not being that, as you get older, you're just now all the, everything that's been on you. If you stay in shape and you stay mentally healthy, you're just going to be more competitive longer and longer, or, what do you kind of attribute that to?
Yeah. So I think there's a little of both, that physical is part of it, and mental is another big part of it. So as you get older, your processing isn't as quick, it isn't as sharp, it isn't as focused as you were when you're younger. And so that, to me, is probably, for me, it's my big challenge, is the mental aspects of it. Physically, same thing. You'll have, I've had both shoulders operated on. I've had my knee operated on. I had 2 back surgeries. I mean, my surgery list goes on and on. In fact, I'm scheduled for one within a month. So it's, you don't fish. I talked to Swindle just a couple days ago. Gerald and I talked. It was like, it's amazing that we just want to fish pain-free, and
right.
It's hard to find a time when we've been pain-free. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I was pain-free. It was probably in the 15 to 20 years ago. So, that's a long time. And so, I don't let it stop me, but obviously there are little things that take your focus away.
Right.
And so to me, it's more of a mental thing, and mentally making the right decisions at the right times. I've always said what always amazed me about Kevin and was Van Dam, he could be catching fish on a spinnerbait, and all of a sudden he goes 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and he doesn't catch one. It's like he throws that away. It's like it never happened. And he's so fearless in his approach that he said, man, I'm going cranking, and pick up a crankbait and do it and just mash them, and that fearlessness is what most of us go around with, this fear, like, man, we can't, I caught them this way. I know they're going to bite. I'm going to keep going. And then all of a sudden you catch one, where you were catching, 6 or 8, and now you catch one, and it keeps you out there again for another hour. And we're, guys that are willing to say, no, there's something happened. There's something changing. Let me try something different. And being able to do that without hesitation, that just makes all the difference in the world in your performance.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the game we play.
Yeah.
So, you've kind of traveled all over the place, and I've watched some shows and everything, and where's your spot? Where's the place where you're just like, you know what, I love fishing here? Because I've seen you in Mexican waters, I've seen you, all over the place, really. And where's that spot in your heart where you're just like, you know what, this is where I love to fish, but there's big fish, and I love being here. Where's that place for you?
Tired of searching through ads to find bass articles in your favorite fishing magazine? Well, we have a solution for that. Introducing Bass Angler Magazine, with over 30 articles in every issue, filled with tips and techniques to help you catch more fish. Follow the pros as they publish the most up-to-date seasonal methods to catching bigger bass. Whether you're a beginner or professional angler, make Bass Angler Magazine part of your gear today. Be a part of the fastest growing bass publication in the nation. Log on to bassanglermag.com with code TV and save 20% when you subscribe now.
There's a number of them, but I can tell you, probably I've been so blessed, to travel around and do what we do and experience some of these fisheries at their peak, at their prime. But, Falcon, to me, back when it was just loaded with tanks, was just amazing.
Yeah.
The first year we went to Falcon, you just sit back and just go, oh my goodness. And that was tremendous. But, if I look at some of the fun places I fished and the places that, I don't really care to travel anymore,
Right.
international, but the one I would do tomorrow, I'd go back peacock fishing in Brazil in a heartbeat. It's just, those big giant peacocks and ripping the topwater bait, it's an addiction, a topwater. and I get addicted to that frog deal like Ish and Dean and that. You just love that part of fishing, watching one explode on it and the water blow up, and then to have it happen in Brazil where you're catching 18, 20 pounders and maybe even a 25, and you're just like, it beats you down like you just hooked a big old tarpon or something. But that's one of my favorites when it comes to freshwater, would be that. And then saltwater, it is tarpon, and sitting on the flats in clear water, to me is just it's special. To me it's beautiful, it's special, seeing big fish swimming, and whether that's tailing redfish or anything like that. To me, I love it. So when I get home, that's what I do. I get in my little saltwater boat, and we go saltwater fishing. In fact, yesterday I got to do it most of the day and just catch a pile of snook and trout, and just had a blast. Caught some mackerel, and just it was just a fun day. So those type of days, to me, I cherish, because that's just super fun, and it's just beautiful. The beauty and splendor of what God gave us is just awesome.
It's I sit here and I listen to this, and everybody listening out there, I can't tell you how much it is it's impressive to me that a guy who fishes for a living, who fishes for spends so much time in the fishing world. I mean, between doing shows and doing talks and doing podcasts and different things, out there doing it. And he said, without even batting an eye, he says, I get home and it's like I load up the boat and we go to the salt to go do some more fishing. This is the difference between.
I'm an addict.
Yeah, I mean, this is such the difference between these other sports. I don't think that I'm a Giants fan, so I don't think Buster Posey gets off. He goes home, he spends time with his family, he spends time with his kids. And I'm not saying Shaw doesn't do that, but it's like he doesn't go out and go, hey, let's go play baseball. No, he's like, hey, let's go fishing. Shaw Grigsby just sat here and says, yeah, I get back home and I come home and see my wife, see whatever. I go fishing, and we spend all this time. I mean, it's such a passion. It's such a great thing that even, like you said, when you're getting into your 60s, you're getting your 70s, you get, guys like Rick Clunn, who just won a tournament at his 70s. It's just this craziness to think that that's still, I get home and I want to go fishing more.
I do everything, but I mean, I do a little hunting. I don't hunt as much as I used to in the day, but I truly love my fishing. I gator hunt, so that's going on right now, and so it's really neat to do that, because it's more of the fishing part of it, because we get to cast on them and hook them, and we get to fight them with a rod and reel, and it's just really cool. So with that, we don't do it like they do on Swamp People and all, where they set lines and all. And but anyway, so it's really cool. But I gator hunt, we scallop, we go out in the ocean, and it's like a big underwater Easter egg hunt that you're snorkeling with a mask, fins, and snorkel, and you're getting these scallops, and it's just incredible. And I saltwater fish, and I shrimp. So shrimp are running right now in the St. Johns River, and we take our boat, we go out there with a cast net. You'll see them on the graph, just like you can watch them on your active target. You go, look at all these shrimp, they look like a big wad of shad down there. You chunk a cast net and you bring them up, and they're awesome, just delicious. So it's cool, because it's you feel like you're doing something for the family. You're bringing home food. You're harvesting. You're a hunter gatherer. But that's what we do. We love the outdoors, and I'll walk in the woods. Right now, I am sitting at my desk at my house, and I'm watching 3 deer eating right in my front yard, and I just love that. I don't. I'm sure a big one's going to come in this fall, and I might let my grandson shoot it. But very honestly, these are our pets here, and the big bucks will just come through to
Oh, did we lose him?
We've got a
There he
single, and so, I mean, we're just having fun. It's just so, to me, life is about, the real things outdoors. It's not about the computers and the
Right.
YouTube and the this and the that. It's about life. And I'm, like I said, I'm blessed to have that. And I just want to hand it down to the next generation
Right.
and hopefully inspire other people to, pursue the outdoors. I mean, whether it's hunting, whether it's fishing, hiking, camping, just get outdoors and enjoy what's out there, because it's special.
Yeah, I just did I did an interview with Nicole Jacobs, and we talked a lot about something that's really, for me, is important. And I've seen this coming more and more and more. And, your era was part of this, and, you would have a perspective that's different than my perspective, but watching a lot of the young ladies come up now and seeing their drive and their passion for the outdoors, and kind of taking that back and going, old fashioned dads didn't take their daughters to go hunting. They didn't take them to go fishing. They had to stay home and learn, the house stuff. And nowadays, so many more have become part of this outdoor world, and so many more are trying to get into it and be in the bass fishing world and be in the hunting world. What's your take on that? I know you're not going to be an opponent to it, but is it something that you're liking? You see this and you go, hey, this is great for our future.
Absolutely. And I wish it had happened earlier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think it's cooler and cool that, I know Nicole personally. She's such a wonderful lady. And, and so, it's really neat to see this and to see the passion that they have. And that's what's great about fishing, is that it doesn't matter. The fish doesn't know whether you're male or female. It doesn't care whether you're black, white, green, or yellow. There's no race. There's no nothing. It's just, it's you, how you present a bait, how you present the lure, how you process, what you're learning on the water and put it into application. So, it's really awesome to see that. I would take my kids fishing, when they were quite young. I do that with my grandson, but I did it with my with my daughter, and now I'm doing it with my granddaughter. She loves it. I mean, I've got a 4-year-old that loves it. A 4-year-old that went snorkeling at 4 out in the Gulf of Mexico, doing the scallop deal. Now she's out there, and we put her in a life jacket because, she would paddle around, and I didn't want her really diving down yet with a snorkel, because she doesn't really know that much about clearing it, blowing the water out, but she's pretty good at it. But anyway, I came up from grabbing a few of them. I look around and I go, well, where's Charlotte, my granddaughter? And my daughter's up in the boat. She says she's right over there. And I look out there, and she's like 30 yards away from any boat. I mean, she is out there by herself in the Gulf of Mexico, and she's looking down, and I go, dadgum, she's a good way. So I paddle over there real quick, swim over there. And I said, come on, let's go back. And I kind of grab her hand, and she's like, no, and she won't go. She pulls away. And I'm like, what? And she's kind of looking down. And so I look, and I can't see anything. Like I said, they're camouflage. And I grab her again and pull. She goes, no. And she kind of points down, and I really have to start looking now. And I go around in a circle, and I look, and finally I look down there and I said, son of a gun. There's one down there. I dive down and get it. Now she's okay to go. But she had spotted this scallop on her own, and she wasn't going to go until someone got that scallop. And I'm like, that is just so cool. And it's neat because, I come home, and my daughter's 30 something now. And she'll say, when are we going fishing? And that to me is awesome. My son loves it. He loves the offshore stuff, the big stuff, but he likes to have something that really, really pulls on him,
Yeah.
And, but he loves the duck hunting and out there. So we're all in on the outdoors. I mean, we love it. And I think that's one of the things that we should always pass down to the next generation and to friends and neighbors, and take them. And it's kind of like a duty to show them how cool it is. And so that we develop we have people that have that love of the outdoors so that it can't be taken away. Because there's people that want to take that away from us. And so if we have a lot of people that still love it and understand it and understand conservation and what needs to be done and all, then we're good for the next few years, and we're able to pass that down generation to generation.
Yeah, it's I definitely live in a state where they would just as soon take all your rights away when it comes to the outdoors. That's for sure.
Yeah, you got that.
California is not one of those states where they're like, yeah, we need to increase the amount of hunting we do, or actually regulate it, or even it's so funny. I recently talked to some fish and game guys, and they just kick back, and look at me, and I ask them questions, and they're like, can't help you, man. I mean, there's just no rhyme or reason why we do the things we do. There's no rhyme or reason why they, the way they regulate our deer herds, or the way they regulate our, you can't bear hunt with dogs anymore. And it's like, well, you do realize we live in the mountains, right? I mean, if you do that, you're not going to get any, the bears aren't going to be regulated correctly because everybody's just going to shoot whatever they want. I mean, there's just no rhyme or reason the way they do it. It's just a bunch of people who believe that hunting is bad, and because they're the political party of choice, here in California, they get their way more than everybody else. I mean, we've gotten rid of so much hunting out here, and when you look at the way they regulate, the way they manage our forests, which are all on fire at this point, so there won't be anything left to be out in anyways. But hey, the deer herds should get bigger because there's more food, going to be more food. It's really hard to do that. And when I was down there in your neck of the woods, in Georgia, Florida, that whole southern area, it was like, it's amazing to me how much opportunity there is.
Yes.
I mean, it was being on, that was the first time I was ever on Toho when we were at the ICAST Cup. And it was, I got a huge eye opener, because you guys talk about deep water different than when I talk about deep water. That's for sure. You've been out here, you've been on the Bullards bars, you've been on different lakes like that. And Oroville, Folsom, things like that. It's like, let's go fish some deep water. And you're talking 40, 50, 60, 80, 200 feet, whatever. You fish deeper water. Down there, it was Toho. Let's go fish some deep water. Well, that'll be 6 feet. I was literally standing in the back of the boat, and the guy's like, hey, we're in deep water now. And I'm, where? If I can stand up still. If I jump out, I'm just going to be stuck in mud. I don't know what you're talking about. So, but the opportunities down there, I mean, like you said, the tarpon, the snook, the redfish, the bass, the hog hunting, you name it. I mean, it was just there. And I just go, wow, it's so different. It's so appealing to someone who's an outdoors minded person like myself to just say, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people are transporting so much from here to there.
Yeah, we still have a little room left if you want to come. But yeah, I actually have killed quite a few hogs from my front doorstep here.
Oh my gosh.
Wild hogs, and they're tasty, man. You just go back, clean them, and barbecue them, and man, it's there's so many great opportunities, and it is wonderful, and I'm just fortunate that I was raised here in Florida,
right,
and so this is where I live, and born and raised, and enjoy the heck out of it. So yeah, it's good, man. It's really good.
Well, Shaw, I'll we've been about an hour now, so we'll wrap it up for you. I appreciate your time, sir. You've always been one of my favorite anglers out there. You've always, just for your passion, your entire drive for this sport, your entire drive for the outdoors. I have always been in awe of you, and I'm so glad I've got to meet you. I'm so glad we're on here, and I will bring, we've talked about coming out and catching some big smallmouth and things like that out here, and getting back up there and maybe trying some of them real big spots up there at Bullards again. So thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate you. It's a good show.
Ed, I'm honored, and I thank you for having me. And I just appreciate you having me on, buddy.
I do. Thank you, sir. We'll wrap this one up, guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight. It's a great show. I really enjoyed this. Is it's an honor for me to even interview this guy. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.